30. Ready to go, Jim? I think he said yes.
I think he said yes.
Welcome to the meeting of the Municipal Building Commission of February 22nd, 2023. We'll establish that we have Terry DeSisto, Ed Stanton, Jackie Romanicki, Jerry Freecott, Jay Allard, and myself, so we have a quorum. The only business tonight, is interviews for the owner's project manager for the roof replacement for the Willett School. There were 4 candidates: RGB, Skanska, CREF, CPM, and CHA. We decided to interview all 4 of them rather than cut it down to 3. And those interviews are tonight. We held a random drawing, and RGB is first, and they are standing here at the podium. So what we do is that we try to hold these to a half an hour. We give you about 20 minutes to make your presentation, leaving about 10 minutes for questions. When we finish, we probably will deliberate. And as you probably know, our job is to make a recommendation to the mayor as to who to contract with for this job. And so we are the designer selection committee as well as being the Municipal Building Commission. So with that having been said, take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is D. Lewis DeQuatro. I'm here with Monica Hanley to my left and John Racine to my right. This presentation will make it 20 minutes. We're familiar with the City of Attleboro. We did the DPW garage and the water building with Mr. Jacoby as the chairman of that building committee. So we're very familiar with how the procedures run and how the town runs. So, want to go to the next first slide?
Just ask you to keep your voice up because there are at least 6 or 8 people at home watching this live on
I
television.
think the mic is right there on the
mic's right
on the
there.
podium.
Okay, I apologize.
That's okay.
So the history, we've been around since 1946. And through that history, about the 1970s, we started working owners' representative projects, a lot of times for banks and developers. And then through the 80s, we developed more of how do you appeal to the owner and give more and more service to the owner. And then we eventually adopted the OPM, coined the OPM. Now, it used to be the client representative. Now they call it the owner's project manager. So we've been doing that in quite a few towns and cities where we like to think that we can have and show an expertise above the others. And I think we'll show you that tonight. Next slide. So this is us. Just introduce. Mark is not here tonight. Mark is our cost estimator. We employ ex-contractors that either retired or chose to do a different line after a certain number of years. That's great because they not only look at our drawings as architects, but they also they are in the field and they're able to look at change orders, they're able to look at pay recs, they're able to look at things from an eye of a contractor. And also we look at things from the eye of an architect, so we see the full circle. Next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about, slide 1, some of the buildings we've done over the last 100 years. And we do forensic, historic, and general restoration, and looked at academic buildings and different types of buildings for this type. We're currently doing 5 different roof projects right now. The most recent that's similar to this is probably up in Canton Library. We're looking at that as well. And we look at it from a forensic point of view because we look at it, is it just a replacement or was it something that caused all the damage that you can then fix? And roofs are very particular. John will get into that in a couple of minutes. But you should look at a project like this and know who the parties are that's working around it, know what your budget is, and then be able to talk at different selections of materials as they come. Next slide. Next slide. So just our extensive knowledge of building codes, MC, PPO, LEED AP. We've got all the little stamps that go around us because we take the time and energy and we go out there and educate not only us but our staff, so that we're fully qualified and can take that qualification and give that back to the owner and the client in this case. Next slide, please. Mark, again, I talked a little bit about his controls and budgets, and he'll look at not only what your budget is, but what the costs are happening right now out there in the field. Like, for example, meter sockets. Something as simple as a meter socket you used to get in a day at an electrical service place now has about a year late time frame on it. So we look at what's the problem with roofs right now. Maybe not the asphalt shingles, but maybe the insulation below it, maybe some of the sealants and silica products that are out there right now. So we'd be able to look at that and justify what do we want to use. Is that the right material to use? What the lead time of that is? Whatnot. That's what Mark can bring. At this point, I'll leave it up to John.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Dave. I'm going to talk a little bit about our OPM-specific experience. I'm a registered architect in Massachusetts, MCPPO certified as well. These are some of the items that we've worked on recently as OPMs, and these are both public and private in Mass. So the Buena Vista Garage, which was somewhat of an interesting project in that it was a reconstruction of an existing garage that hadn't been touched in 40 years. So we were the OPM, we represented the town of Somerville, or the city of Somerville for that project. Montechusett Regional Transit Authority happened to be the longest running, public transit project in America. The project started in the 80s, and it had been funded, and it just never got going. But we built it. We represented the MARTA essentially on that, and it's terrific for a parking garage, which it is. We're currently working with the town of Smithfield in Rhode Island, where you represent the owner on for a new field, RTU replacement. So there's roof work and things of that nature as the OPM. We're going through the design phase now. Estimating. The estimating today has been a challenge, I have to say, after the pandemic. I know you're sick of hearing about it, but it really still affects us. So we're going through a reconciliation on the estimate. It came in way over what originally had estimated, and a lot of it we found that it was the actual estimator that we feel may have gone a little bit overboard because of some of the reactions that we've had over the last couple years for some of the pricing that's come in. So that's been an interesting process. And the Laborers International is a private client, but is run basically like a public entity. It went out, it bid, it was invitation, but everything was done, addendas, everything was put in at the same time with the contractors in terms of putting it out to bid. It was really managed as a public project. That is a significant in that we've worked on 2 of their campuses. We're currently building three buildings on their Hopkinton campus. So we're dealing with utilities, the Conservation Commission, and a lot of roofing. Lots of roofing, as you can think. All different kinds, actually. We have flat roof, slate roof. We've got asphalt roof in some smaller locations. So we're certainly familiar with that.
And some of them are historic roofs as well, so which is another
Yes,
component on one of the mansions.
Yeah, the mansions was great project. What we tried to do is give you a little bit of an idea of some of the variety of things that we are familiar with and what we can do. Go to the second.
Yeah, that's
Another advantage I like to think is our proximity. Obviously, we're just up the street. I think when I was working in Boston, I took this train station, I don't know, 2,000 times. So we're certainly familiar with the area. And as Dave mentioned previously, we are familiar. We did the water building and we did the DPW building as designers, but we certainly could have done that as OPMs as well. But we like Attleboro. It's close to home, and we'd give you very good service. Next, please. So we look specifically at your project and what we think the tasks would be. I read over the RFQ and really thought about how we'd execute it. So initially, we'd want to take a look at the assessment that Russo Ibar did, and it looks pretty thorough. We'd like to go out there. I know it was done in 2021. We'd like to go out and take a look, see if anything has really changed. Has it gotten worse? Has the weather recently, with the wind that we've gotten, does it change it at all? That would be our initial thing. And then also, we would start putting together the RFQ for the designer. My understanding is that you don't have a designer on board yet. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we are required to hire the OPM first.
Yes. Yep. You'd be surprised how many towns don't do that. It kind of goes backwards. But we put the RFQ out. We'd get that right away. You really do have if we're trying to get this done before September 23, we gotta
It's a
get.
summer slammer in the eyes of the school department.
It's a summer slammer, that's for sure. So we do that, we develop a master schedule, and then also we develop your overall budget. So in your overall budget, we look at construction, we'd also look at all the soft costs, permitting, any other permits, testing, things of that nature that you'd require for a project like that. Once that's been established, we'd certainly push out the RFQ in this case, RFP, depending on what the funding comes in at. And get your designer on board right away, as quickly as possible. It is a public process. I know that there's some time involved. It'd be great if you could do that in 2 to 3 weeks, and then get somebody in with your proposals and get that going. Is there a contractor you typically like to use? Is it a town contract or anything like that, or is it a?
No, it's public bidding.
Yeah, okay, so we would go in that direction. We'd assist and develop any addenda that come in with the RFQ, and then issue those and get the RFQ responses as quickly as possible. Provided we take a look at them, do our due diligence, check references, and make a recommendation to the board as quickly as we could. Go to the next one.
Sure.
Once the design team's on board, we'll monitor the construction, or we'll monitor the design as it progresses. For this project, I would say you'd probably have a schematic design phase and then go into construction documents. I don't think I'd mess around too much with design development and then multiple CDs if we can avoid that. I just don't think you have the time if you want this to be a summer slammer. Once we get that out, we would go through the bid phase for a contractor, put it up on the central registry, bid docs, the whole deal, or ComDocs, and then solicit contractors for bids based on those drawings. Depending on how this is structured, FSC, you might have some filed sub-bids. So your filed sub-bid process will come in first. That'll take 2 to 3 weeks, and then you do a general contractor. Hopefully we can avoid that. We'll try to do that, but it really does depend on what's there in terms of flashing and carpentry and things of that nature, and painting that may require filed sub. Once we get a contractor on board, obviously we monitor construction, and it's we're open to obviously the amount of monitoring that is comfortable, that the city is comfortable with. We could be there daily, we could be there weekly, we could be there bi-weekly. The way that the Summer Slammer, I love that word, would probably be out there relatively often because it's going to go fast. It's not something that we can go out a week and 2 weeks later, half the roof will be done. We'll want to monitor it as it goes. And then obviously we'd help you in the closeout portion, which usually that last 2% of the project takes forever, and it's hard to actually execute for some reason. Not sure why, but this just seems to be the issue. So we'll make sure that you have all your warranties. We'll make sure that you have, we do the punch list, that the roof is confirmed by the manufacturer, and then we've been monitoring it. You have your reports. We'll do daily reports every time we're out there, so that you're confident that there's no issue with the roof. You go to the next slide, please. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time on the schedule because, we took a look at all these steps. And I think the real challenge is going to be trying to, it really wants to be vertical, but it's kind of going off to the side a little bit. We may be able to shorten this area a bit where the design team has reviews and things of that nature. Hopefully we can shorten those because it really is a roof job. It's not like we're building a new building where there's multiple reviews. I think you could save time there. Hopefully we can save some time in engaging the design team, but usually a public bid, you're in close to a month or so to do that. And then I tried to overlap some of the bidding process, some of the construction bidding, and it's tight. So I would say don't delay. Bring us on board. One of the other challenges I think you'd find is having enough time to deal with any issues. The building was built in 1941. That construction is very good construction, but it's been there almost 100 years now. You know, we're looking at 80 years. So if you run into issues, we want to make sure that the building gets closed and tight by the end of September or something. You don't want it to go into October or November, and then you're dealing with weather issues, and you're dealing with weather, winter conditions. Your students are there, and things of that nature. So we run into that before, which we really want to avoid here.
The
So
building was substantially reconstructed.
Early 90s.
early 90s, yeah, with an addition in 93.
Yeah, Jackie and I
Yeah.
were just youths on the commission at that point.
Brings good memories.
Been here
huh?
forever.
It's a great building now. They don't, the whole term that they don't make them like that anymore is really true. It's a nice building. And I think you've chose probably the easiest type of construction at this point. Maybe 5 years ago or 3 years ago, I would have said maybe consider a metal roof or something of that nature. You get longer life out of it. But in today's demands for metal roofing or something of that nature, I think it would be a real challenge. So sticking with the asphalt is probably your safest bet. But that would be something we'd want the design team and us to go into further to really study what could be some of the options. And that would be part of our initial review. And then as the design team comes on board, we would ask them to look into that as well. So I agree. We're pretty close.
In 3 minutes, I just want to sum this up by saying what makes us different than the other people that you're going to be interviewing today. John hit on a couple of subjects. One of the easy ones, we're close by. But the real technical one is we're also architects. So we're able to not only assist you, the definition of an owner's project manager is someone who on your behalf goes out there and identifies who the parties are going to be to do the job, to make sure it's done on budget and on time, and to make sure the town doesn't suffer any consequences of over change orders or the wrong product specified or warranties not properly done that then you guys have to come back and deal with at a later time. So by us being architects, for us being construction people, and us being owners, project managers, we're not only able to see the back end, like John talked about, but the front end, to understand what the architect that you select goes out and looks at the warranty, looks at the various products, be able to give you our opinion as well. And that makes, I always use the definition of what makes a sharper pencil, that makes the sharper pencil. Because then you have different variation of ideas. We could get along and get completely along with the other architect and agree with them wholeheartedly, but we could have another way of looking at things. And that only benefits you, the people of the committee, and the people of Attleboro. So that's what sets us, I think, different or apart than most of the other competitors that are coming in here tonight. I don't know if you want to add something else.
I would only say that the people that you'd be dealing with, myself and Mark, we're not an international company. We're a local company, and we plan on staying in this area. So we want to do the best job that we can. I think you'll find that some of the anyways, I'll just leave it at that.
I just want to mention just one little thing that here on the
Unknown caller.
one of this slide here, we have experience with historic buildings, which this one is not, but our understanding forensic investigations, and we also have the ability to do high definition aerial monitoring. We bring the drones and do recordings that could be done every day. That's something that might be also beneficial to the city. Constant monitoring.
It's a great point. Monica just brought up, and believe it or not, we just did a roof job about 6 months ago where the contractor put up the flashing incorrectly on a weekend when he was supposed to catch up. And we happened to have a drone flying by that day, took pictures of it.
Mm-hmm.
They quickly re-roofed the whole thing. We weren't able to see where the leak was coming from. We went back to those 4K images. In 4K image, you can take your phone, you can zoom up on it. As far as you can zoom, you can see it. And we were able to find out that he didn't put the flashing in place at the right time because he did it in a haste way over the weekend. and then they owned it. At that point, they came back and fixed it.
Right. And a project with this type of timeline, I think these precautions are very helpful at the end of the day. So I just wanted to bring
Okay,
that up.
my question relates to the timing. Do you have a concept as to how many weeks the contractor would need? I'm just working backwards in my mind to replace a roof of this magnitude.
Yeah, in the schedule, I think I put 7 to 8 weeks.
7 to 8 weeks.
I think so. And again, it
So
depends on how.
basically, July and August.
It's gonna be August, you have to procure it. That's the killer, right? You bring a contractor on board, and by the time you bring a contractor on board, I think you're gonna be somewhere in August. So you're gonna be August into September.
The school department is not going to be happy if that's our schedule.
Well, I think we can take a look at other items, but in a standard means going across, knowing that it's publicly bid, knowing that I could come up here and just show you any schedule, right? It's easy for me to shiv that.
I want
shiv that
honesty.
around.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very tight project in order to get it done in that time. You may be able to do a design build, where you engage the contractor,
Well,
the
no,
design team at the
it's
same
not
time.
what we're gonna do, but, so, how long do you think the architect would need to design it before we put it out to bid?
I only gave the architect a month.
Okay. So, if we needed June to get a contractor on board, July and August for them to work, then
Well, they still have to
we
procure it.
need to have the architect on board by the beginning of May then, right?
May, yes. And then you also you're gonna need it before that, because they're gonna need a month or so to do the design work. Then you're gonna need a month or so to actually bid it, at least. So you're gonna need it April. They're gonna need to do the work in April and then bid it in May to get them on, to get a contractor anytime near June,
Okay.
from my experience.
And do you have a sense of how competitive the market is for roof projects right now?
In the summertime, you're not the only one that coined the frame Summer Slammer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of-
We've learned that from other projects.
However, my experience with roofs, especially with schools, has been if you can negotiate early, get the contractor on early, you can secure, and like any businessman would want to know what job they have upcoming months. So if you can secure that individual company early on, they can secure the product, but you can also ask for overtime or weekend work, and that may expedite your schedule to bring it in that August timeframe. But you got to build that into your schedule, which
Yeah.
John would do.
And
that.
we'd have to build that into our request from the municipal council for money too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I think there are plenty of larger, it also is the manpower, right? You could have a crew out there that have 50, 60 guys that are just doing roofing, and it'll take 2 weeks to do the project. But there are not a lot of them out there, and they're gonna be busy, but that's possible. I think we'll bake that into the RFP, say you need to be done by this point. You have X amount of time to do it. And be upfront with them, right up front. Be right up front at the beginning. We'll give them the schedule as part of the package, and there's no question. If they can do it, great. If they can't, well, don't bother bidding, I guess.
John is absolutely correct. Be prepared when you build that into the RFP and they know that, then what are they gonna do? Well, we gotta work weekends and nights, so it may escalate that price. So then John will work with you with a budget to look at those two divided
Yeah, we
lines.
took a look at the budget. I thought it
Because we
was-
have a number of moving parts here. One is to hire an OPM, another one is to hire a designer, a third one is to get funding, and the fourth one is to execute the project. And can't do any of them without doing all four of them.
So when you say get the funding, I'm assuming it's not a referendum or a vote or anything of that nature. It's
It would require the mayor to send a request for funding to the municipal council, and the municipal council would then have to vote the funds. And we have enough right now to hire the OPM, but we need, as soon as the OPM is on board, we're going to seek some numbers from you or whoever is chosen, so that we can ask for an intelligent amount of money to finish the project from the council. And that was part of the reason, not only did the law require us to do this first, but we also are, I'm waving to somebody behind you who's leaving. So we also are looking at, well, let's put it this way. If you ask the council for 1.5 million and it costs 1.7, you're a bum. And if you ask them for 1.7 and it costs 1.5, you're a hero.
Every project, yes, I understand. Sure, no, I get it. What's the typical, how long does it typically take to get that type of approval?
Well, if it's a bond issue, then the mayor would have to send it down probably sometime, because we intend to do this very quickly with the OPM. So
Sure.
we're hoping that the mayor could send it down maybe in mid-March and have the city council voting and having the funding in place, right around the time we have to hire, around the 1st of May. That would be my guess.
To get the architect on board, or to
Yeah.
get the design team?
Yeah, I mean, they have to hold a public hearing and they have to get the planning board to agree. It's part of the city's master plan to go ahead and replace roofs, which isn't hard. And, so it's there's a lot of work to be done. And unfortunately, our capital projects clerk, administrator, I should say, left for another job last week. And so that's one of and we have an acting mayor. So we will not have a permanent mayor until March 10th, who can't hire anybody until then. So,
Wow, you guys are,
our,
you guys are stacking it.
Hitting it out of the park.
But it's not unsurmountable. I mean, we've
Of course
done
it isn't.
Some amazing.
we always succeed.
The other alternative we've ran into roofs is, it's always about noise and smell for kids in the classroom. So kids get out of school 2:30, 3 o'clock. So we've done roofs, if you started in August, if you were in that predicament, you started in August. By September, when they start school, you may have the underlayment, taken off, and you may have a sublayment put on, and you finish it after hours and weekends, and do it that way. And you put temporary roofs until it gets done, so you don't have any leaks when you address both issues. The other alternative that we've told clients to do in this type of predicament is to get enough money to hire the architect early, get the plans done, and almost put it out even before you get approval. If you don't get approval, you can always cancel the bid. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to burn the candle on both ends, because you're also in competition with other towns and cities doing the same thing you're doing. So that's why we try to push that. You get it procured early, or out to procurement, you get the approval, you're already ahead. Now you can start early. You may be able to meet a month that way. John does wonderful things with schedules and analysis, and he's got great contacts with subcontractors, so he can bring them in, talk to them, and they can have other ideas as well.
Yeah, it's always good to reach out, and even if it's not a party that is in this area or something of that nature, you reach out to the contractor and be like, hey, how do you? I have a school that needs to have a new roof, and in 2 weeks, what have you done in the past? So we have a lot of those types of resources that we can pull from as well.
Any questions from any other commission members? Right, well, I want to...
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Have you been out to the site?
Yeah, I drove by. I wasn't able to actually see
Is it all steep pitch roof?
It is. Well, yes. Yeah, I didn't go around the back, but the entire front is all gable roof. There's a in the report. There's an aerial that has it as it's all 7/12 pitch. The majority of it.
That should be a relatively simple design then.
It is. Like, again, you couldn't have picked a better type of system to put down for speed and for easeability and for a number of contractors that can do the work. One item you may want to consider as well as we're closing up here is procure the material ahead of time. And really, you're just buying labor, or you're bidding out the labor. We do that a lot for mechanical equipment that have an extended long lead time, but you may be able to do it here so that you have the material on site once they start going. Once the contractor's on board, and you assign that material to the contractor. That may be an option that you could look at as well.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming in. As I said, we're going to deliberate later on tonight because we got 3 more half-hour interviews. more fun than anyone should be able to have in a night.
I've been there, yeah.
But thank you for your time, and if you call and ask for Molly
Okay.
tomorrow, she may have some information and she may not.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I just pull the flash drive, or does it need any kind of additional steps to remove it?
No, I think just
Okay, just pull it up?
pull it, I think you're good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, folks. Good luck tonight.
Excuse me.
Did you hear him say anything?
All
Okay.
set.
All right, we're back out of recess.
Ready?
And the second candidate is Skanska. So therefore, go ahead. Tell us why we should hire you.
Perfect. So we put together a presentation, you have the handouts. Basically, throughout the presentation, we're trying to answer that question, why should you hire us? And first of all, thank you. Again, we have a long history with Attleboro and continue to have success here, so we're hoping you select us. Just to give you a quick overview, we've been working on, with Attleboro, over 6 high school roofs. We'll show you in a minute, and you may or may not know, we're the OPM for the high school now. This is the team. I'm Dale Caldwell, will be the principal in charge.
I am Anjanette Kelso. I will be the program director.
And I'm Bob Stress. I'll be the field manager on the project.
So just to reiterate again, in-house resources do 100% in-house. We don't outsource anything. I did see in the contract there was an ad alternate for estimating services. So again, Matt Esposado, top left-hand corner, or top left I should say, is our in-house estimator with 13 full-time estimators. We have gone through the budget that Russo Barr put together, and we see, we'll talk a little bit about budgeting later. And then also Hal Raymond is another asset. Hal is an envelope specialist. He actually used to work for Briggs, which is do the envelope of the building. They review details, window details, roofing details, so forth and so on. Not saying that Bob can't analyze it, but there's another resource if needed. So again, and all the other people, I don't think they're applicable for this job. Relevant experience, the top 6, you can see from the high school roof, which is no longer here, from Brennan to Wamsutta, Hyman Fine, Hill Robert, Studley, all these were completed on time, under budget. The bottom 3 are Brockton High School. The 2 to the far right are the junior high schools in Brockton, just to show you our experience. Over the last 10 years, we've done over 40 roofs here, throughout the Commonwealth. Let's see, our project understanding. It looks like in '93 there was a renovation. We actually walked the site, the 3 of us, just kind of looked at the building, so you can see there has been work done there. We did read the Russo Bar report from April of '21, and we also know that there's a $2 million budget that was in the RFQ for the project. Roughly it's 30,000 square feet, and it looks like the summer of '23 you want the project finished, which is all doable. I mean, that's definitely reasonable.
And one of the things that we realized when we were over there walking the site is that it's got tremendous access all the way around the building, and it'll make it easy for the roofers to get in there, strip, re-roof, anything they need to do. It doesn't look like it's going to be a problem at all.
Just because there are people at home watching this live on TV, please step up
Oh,
to the
sure.
microphone and speak, because sometimes we get complaints that they can't hear.
So budgeting, obviously budget's always a concern. One of the things that we do as an OPM, we go through a complete budget. The things that we've identified based on our experience is deck replacement, hidden conditions. On other projects, and this is something Bob's main task is to go into the building to see if there's any, looking from inside up, and see if there's any deck that maybe is rotten. It looks like a wood deck. There may be gypsum in there as well. Through all flashing, just looking at the Russo Bar report, there may be some additional flashing, in our opinion, like the cupola. There's a couple vents up there that looks like it has to be flashed. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The window wall system, looks like they're going to repair it. It looks like the glass is solid, so it looks like just the surround needs to be repaired. The cupola, our experience with working with cupolas typically, and again, we don't know what's in the budget with Russo Bar, it's just a number of like $900,000 for the roof. Typically when we touch a cupola, they fall apart. So Bob and I were just talking, it may make sense, and we have to do an investigation if we're selected, to really look at it, and maybe you want to build a new cupola on the ground, you take the one off, put the new one on, as well as the wood siding that's on the side of the buildings. And then basically the trim, if you look up, there's some fascia that's rotten that has to be replaced. But a lot of this will be flushed out when you have the design team on board, do a thorough, go through the entire building, understand what's required. In the snow melt system, there's a small system up there with snow melt. On other projects, we finished the roof, and I think the city came back and put snow melt on. So the reason we put up there just to identify it as another cost. So when we do our budget, sufficient contingencies, obviously, make sure there's money's in there. Like we said, the first one, hidden conditions, you never know what you're going to see behind, especially the cupolas and those vents. When you start pulling them apart, it could be rotten inside. This building's, 30 some odd years old, or the roof, I should say. And by the way, you got your use out of this roof. 30 years is reasonable for a shingle roof, so it's not as bad. Value engineering, there's maybe some opportunities. I mean, it's a roof. There's some window systems, but maybe there's opportunities to VE something. This Russo Bar report does talk about architectural shingle, which, it's a 40-year shingle versus a 3-tab. So we do find that we're maybe pushing the envelope on the budget. You can always look at the type of shingle, maybe from a 40 to a 30. But right now, we looked at your budget, and we think comfortably you're in good shape. And then the logistics plan, again, we're talking about phasing. I mean, hopefully the building's vacant in the summertime. I don't know if there's summer camps there or not, but what we want to do is a vacant building, the best thing. We'll talk to the contractor, usually start up high, go down low, back to front. But just make sure that everyone knows the logistics. So again, if for some reason, if the city has to be in that building, we want to make sure the contractor knows. So again, if we have to have a logistics plan, we'll develop that.
So just as far as back to the budget, once again, you know me with the budget. one of our strategies is to make sure that we do have a biddable set of documents so that we can capture everything, all of the costs, within the project budget. And then, as Dale said, leave a little bit of room should something come up, have sufficient contingencies for that. And then, value engineering, just when we were walking around the building, we have already recognized some opportunities, maybe for some savings. Yeah.
So again, safety, logistics, just again, highlight some points here. Safety first, Bob, our full-time site rep, will make sure this is a safe work environment. Pre-construction survey, if this works, like I said, we walked around and like we just said, there's access all the way around the building, which is a good thing, but pre-construction survey, we want to make sure like all the trees that are mature trees will document, any of the curbs, so the contractor most likely is going to put dumpsters all the way around this. They'll have some lulls, they'll have different pieces of equipment on the grass. So what we do is do a survey before them on site. We'll actually walk it with them, and any damage they own. So end of the day, they have to repair whatever damage, if any, again, if any. But it does look like there's great access around this building, so it's actually a very attractive project for roofers. So again, waste disposal, cleanliness, temp protection, lay down, and phasing, again, if the city, because on prior projects, the interior work, again, I'm not sure what's in the budget, but the Russo Bar report showed that there's some water damage. So I don't know if that's in the budget, or is the city going to do that after the fact? Go and basically repair the drywall and paint.
My understanding is that they want everything fixed.
So what we do there is we'll make sure there's an interior package as well. Because again, you're putting a brand new roof on. I would think you want to repair the drywall or whatever. You can see water damage in the report. We've never been in the building. So again, that's something with Bob's help, we would do a survey to figure out what needs to be repaired. So key scheduling consideration, designer selection, like everything, you want to be the first to the market. We have RFQs ready to go. We're selected, we hit the ground running, get the designer on board quickly. We're talking about, getting them up on the roof, really digging into the cupolas and all the things that we talked about. Bob's great at doing constructability reviews, so we can do that quickly with them. So get a full set of bid documents, go out, hire a contractor soon as possible. Because, again, it's in, this summer, I'm assuming just like every summer, it's going to be busy. So we want to get to the market as quickly as possible to get some interest into it. More people bidding on the job, overall, it's better. Lead time items. I did check on roof sheathing, ice and water shield. So basically, the roof sheathing is plywood that goes over the roof. They're going to rip all the shingles off, they're going to put plywood on, and they're going to fully ice and water shield the entire roof. And then they're going to put architectural shingles on. That's the shingle that's solid versus 3 tabs. And right now, there's no lead time that we're concerned with. So again, just doing our research in-house, there doesn't seem any concerns right now. The gutter system, I'm not sure if you've been to the building, but it's pretty solid. So that's something we would, going back to Anjanette's value engineering, we may want to look at keeping that gutter system there. It is solid. We didn't, little damage here and there. But again, that's something that if there's budget issues and not knowing exactly what the scope is, there may be an opportunity to keep it, intact. So again, working with municipal buildings and schools, staffing, cost certainty again, all our prior projects on time, under budget. Reporting, here's an example of right here. This is the WAMSUTA meeting notes that we put in there, would follow the same process. No surprises, like we say, our job is to keep you informed. Continue and update and communicate. So why Skanska? So we actually, 2009 was the first job that we actually worked with the city. That was actually the old high school roof replacement. So we do understand the city, what's required. We all come from the building side, so we are builders. We are 100% OPMs, but we do have that background, builders expertise, seasoned professionals. We got Bob here. Great at constructability review, looking at all the details for the roof. And sometimes you just look at a roof, but the details will kill you, all the flashing and all the details that come along with it. In-house estimating, again, just going back to the contract, there was something that said additional fee for estimating, assuming that there's a detailed estimate. But ready to start now. So we're I think that was it.
I just have a couple of things that I'd like to just point out as well. And it's just about it's a quick project. We hope to knock it out this summer. And so it's important to keep everybody informed. And we kind of like the weekly meeting format where we're keeping everybody informed As a team, we like to identify the opportunities before they become issues, and then that way, if we have our weekly meetings, we can talk about them, we can resolve them, and we can move forward quickly. Dale had talked about the materials, not being an issue as far as supply chain problems or anything like that. One of the critical factors here, though, is getting a GC and a roofer on board, because the labor is going to be the issue. So we want to get the drawings out there, get it out to bid, and then get the best qualified team out here and get them to commit to start so we can get this on time, on budget, and get the school open in the fall and ready to go.
And I just want to add, not only during construction, the quality of the work is going to be per the plans and specs, but also in the early design, just making sure, like Dale touched on, the devil's in the details and making sure that the documents are biddable and they have full scope. And so we buy this job out correctly and keep it on budget.
We envision this as a summer slammer, and we'd like to have it done for the opening of school around just before the 1st of September. How realistic is that?
I think it's absolutely realistic. We did the Brennan School, we did that, it was a summer slammer as well. And I believe that was that during the pandemic? So there was other issues as well with materials and all of that kind of stuff, but it's absolutely doable. And again, as long as we can get the bid documents reviewed, and we'll look at them and we'll find any holes that we can, and then we'll get it out and we will get the best team on board and we'll hold them to the schedule.
So how many weeks would you think it would take a contractor out in the field once they started to do the job? Is this a 6-week, a 12-week?
11 weeks.
Excuse me?
To clean up, 11 weeks.
11 weeks?
About, yeah. Most important would be to get the design done and get it out on the street and get a contractor selected so we can get started when school gets out.
Yeah, just to add to that, so the roof is a 7-pitch, so it's not that steep. And like I said, we walked that, walked the whole site around the perimeter. It actually is broken up very nicely, so they can actually maybe put 2 crews on there, which is very realistic. So they can have 1 crew on this end. And again, not assuming there's nothing going on inside the building, so they have free reign of the building.
Our assumption.
Yeah, so what they could do is put a crew here and a crew there. Usually want to start on a roof on the top, so if anything falls down, it doesn't fall on the new roof. And usually they start in the back to the front, but the Bob's point is very realistic. And the key here is to get the designer on board, make sure they have the capacity. And, again, I want to downplay a roof job, but there is details that have to be, thought out. And Bob's great at just, working with them. So once we get that milestone done, get the drawings done, we go out and bid this thing out as quickly as possible. And, get them, and again, the material's available. And if I had to guess, they may be waiting for the kids to get out of the school. And hopefully, snow days this year, maybe they're going to be out sooner, so you can add a little bit to the summer slammer schedule.
Yeah, because I was just thinking 11 weeks is more than July and August. So would you think that it would be worth our while to specify that the number of weeks that the contractor had and get bigger contractors that way?
Yeah, we can dictate a schedule and say you own the schedule. So they can, again, it's residential neighborhood, so we want to be sensitive to the neighbors. But maybe they can work weekends. Maybe they can work later. It's an elementary school, so maybe 3 o'clock on. But again, they want to be productive, so we don't want them to go out there for 2 or 3 hours. Not going to accomplish anything. Right. So what we would do is say this is the start date and this is the end date.
I don't want to be insensitive because there are some neighbors on Watson, but there's a large field behind it. And, and the river is across the way, so we don't have as many neighbors as we might have on other projects.
Yeah, and it's really not that noisy. It's a lot of hand tools and probably air guns, so you're going to hear like so. But again, it's just noise. So.
Commission members, any questions? One other, you mentioned $2 million. Did that number come from Russo Bar?
Well, no, it was in the RFQ for OPM services. If I read that correctly?
So it must have come from Jeremy then.
Yeah, just with Russo Bar's number, it was $900,000 for the roof, and if I'm correct, like $10,000 for the repair of the window system. That was in 2021 dollars. So you're talking 23, 2 years. So, save, put 10% on top of that. It's like, because I did a quick budget just back in my head, and it's like 1.1 million for the project. And then you have design services. Again, not knowing like the cupolas, if they're going to replace all the gutters. So there's a lot of additional costs on top of that. And then the interior, not knowing what was, established, for the interior work. So, but,
Well, I imagine if the roof has been leaking for another 2 years, the interior might be in worse shape than it was.
well, in going back to the study on the front end, it's all that decking up there, which we experienced in the city. A lot of decking had to be replaced. So what we did is when we bought out, through the specification, when we bought out the contractor to Anjanette's point, we would hire a GC, being a roofer, and they would own X amount of square footage of deck replacement. So we bought out, say, hypothetically, we'll put 1,000 square feet in there, but also put an add for additional square footage and deduct for additional. So we lock it all in. And with Attleboro High School, way back in 2009, I don't know if you remember, we got a credit back from the roofer because we bought out all this decking. And at the end of the day, they didn't need, and we tracked it in the field. So Bob would say, all right, there's 5 square feet of decking. We added it all up. And the day back then, they actually gave us a credit back for the decking because they didn't have to use it all. We would recommend using the same approach here. It is tough to, when you rip a roof off, you don't know what's underneath it. But from the inside, again, I don't know if there's a ceiling in there, if it's exposed. So we would do as much as we can. And you can see on the roof, a lot of shingles are missing. They're actually they're on the ground right now around the building if you walk around there. And you can see where there's been some patching, which implies there's been some leakage. So I'm sure all that plywood underneath there, or whatever's under there, would have to be replaced.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for coming in. We are going to do some deliberating after we have 2 more interviews. And if you call and ask for Molly tomorrow, she may or may not have some information, depending on how much I can catch up to her and communicate.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, are we in recess again? Commission. In a minute, he's going to tell us when we're going to go out of recess and go back on camera, because there are at least 6 or 8 people in the world watching this live on television, because we're must-see TV on the first Wednesday of every month. We're going to give you about 20 minutes to explain why we should hire you, and then about 10 minutes for questioning. After one other candidate besides you comes in for an interview, we will deliberate and see if we can make a recommendation to the mayor. Molly may or may not know tomorrow, so if you call, you may get some information if you ask for her.
Great, thank you.
And so when you're talking, make sure you're at the podium and you use the microphone, so that it does pick up on the TV.
Yes.
Great.
So, Jim, are we ready to go? Okay, we're back in session. Introduce yourself, please.
Great, thank you. My name is Patrick Murphy. I'm Vice President at CREF, which stands for Corporate Real Estate and Facilities. Thank you again for your time today, and we're looking forward to the presentation. So I'm going to give you just a quick...
You don't have to bend over, it's okay.
Thank you. I'm going to give you just a quick overview of the company, and then I'm going to hand it over to the agenda. So CREF, like I said, stands for Corporate Real Estate and Facilities. We're a full-service real estate and facilities advisory firm. Today we'll be speaking specifically about the project management arm of our company, but we also do things like multi-year capital planning, program management, and everything up to advisory services, construction administration, and things like that. So what we'll do is we'll run through the introductions quickly, and then we'll dive right into our background and qualifications, the specific approach to the project. We'll talk a little bit about how we mitigate construction on our projects. We'll give you a few of our samples on how we communicate, and then we'll basically bring it to an end and go into the question and answer section. So with that said, I'll let Ted introduce himself and take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ted Gentry. I'm a professional engineer. I've been with CREF for about 1.5 years now. I had my own business prior to that, and I probably went after some Attleboro school projects while I was doing that. Ted Gentry Associates. But it's been great working with these guys now. And in particular regards to this project, one of the projects that we did was the 200,000 square foot middle school renovation and new roofing project for Plymouth's intermediate community school. And then clearly all of the projects that we did school-wise had large roofs, and it was certainly a very important part of the process. But I've been involved in the education side, especially of the building business for a long time, as well as with Turner Construction, which both of these guys worked at Turner Construction, none of us at the same time, but building all kinds of buildings. And whether it's education or hospital work, which is what CREF does a lot of right at the moment, it all involves the same process, which we will talk about shortly. But I'll let Don introduce himself as well.
Good evening. Yep, my name is Sean Dunn, project manager with CREF. As Ted said, I've been with CREF for about 2 years, Turner Construction before that. I got 13 years of experience in the higher ed sector, working in the Boston area, specifically Boston University, Northeastern, Harvard. Recently, I've had the opportunity to work nationally in some K through 12 environments, which has been great. I can speak specifically to what I'm working on currently. Right now, CREF is representing Boston University on a $12.4 million roof replacement at the Metcalf Science Center. That's basically houses their undergraduate chemistry and physics departments. We've partnered with Summit Construction to basically replace a 38-year-old ballasted roof that has just passed its useful life. We've also used the opportunity to completely replace the exhaust system from standalone exhaust to 3 banks of new strobic fans. That will basically put the school in a position for another 100 years of success and research. Right now, we're basically slated to complete the job in June. Today, we cut over the exhaust system to the new strobic fans, and we've had minimal impact to the active operation of the labs in the space. So, Ted, maybe you can speak to Plymouth.
Yeah, on the top right corner there, the black roof that you see, these are very interesting photographs, was the Plymouth Community Intermediate School, and that was the one 2,000 square feet, and they decided to stay with EPDM there because there were some sections that were going to be left alone. But the concept there, which was somewhat interesting as well, is that the school was occupied during the project that occurred before this, which was a complete renovation of all the mechanical systems inside the building. It was built in 1970 when Plymouth had a new power plant and electricity was very cheap. And back here when we did this about 2005 or 6, something like that, I believe, they switched over to gas. And so the whole inside of the building was changed out, all new ceiling systems, HVAC, chilled beam sort of design, which worked out great for the classrooms. But then the roof went in last. After all the new equipment was up on the roof, this was the last piece of the project. And the kids were involved in the school for the entire time. We worked out the mitigation plan and making sure that they were safe, teachers were safe, everybody was safe while this work was going on. And in fact, we actually involved some of the science classrooms in some of the work that was going on so that they could see what is construction all about, what are all those pipes and all that stuff up on the roof do. The others are the newer schools in Plymouth, the North High School and the South High School, and then the Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, which was the first model high school in the state of Massachusetts, just prior to the MSBA starting. It was done under the Department of Education, excuse me. And it's all, it certified, LEED chips certified, which would be about like a LEED, it's not LEED chips, it's mass chips, LEED silver, LEED gold or something like that at the time. It was just a different process that does still exist. So, and I know you've indicated in the package somehow that you were looking at that aspect of it, but roofing project will be challenging to see how to do that, but we certainly will find a way to, if LEED, not certification necessarily, but if you wanted to meet some LEED standard, that's something that could be covered. Good. Patrick?
So I can speak to the kind of our general approach to every project, and then I'll get into the project-specific plan that we've built for this roof replacement. You know, we believe we focus and prioritize our team in every phase of the job. We typically break down each construction process into 4 separate phases, whether it be the project startup, kickoff, and team building. The pre-construction and the design, we've had a lot of experience managing the design team, making sure we were building input from the team, in your case, you know, into the documents, making sure that we've captured all the value and what's important to you guys, and we're able to target the design to the budget and make sure that we're not over-designing or under-delivering. And then in the construction process, it's basically identifying the risks and constraints, mitigating the impacts to the operation of the building, and making sure that we're transitioning to operations and closeout and providing you guys with a quality product that meets your needs. Gentlemen, if you guys have anything to add?
You did great. Yeah, I think you'll be stepping more into it in the next slide.
Specifically to this project, this is our work plan that breaks down our approach to this roof replacement in 4 of the phases I just spoke to. At a high level, and we can get into the question and answers piece of this at the end, you know, I think if we could come on board here late February, early March, we would spend the month of March basically onboarding ourselves onto the project, basically working to procure design services. We'd like to have an architect on board by early April, spend the month of April defining scope, setting expectations, and building the schedule out with the design team. We would expect the design team to provide us with a concept level takeoff that we could then evaluate to confirm budget before we move into construction documents. Again, we're looking to validate the budget with the design and make sure we have a target that we're drawing to. And then we would spend the month of May developing construction documents. With the target would be to have 100% construction documents with a 50% third-party estimating service. Again, verifying the budget before we put documents on the street to either a general contractor or a roofing prime contractor right before Memorial Day. I'm with the target of basically starting construction right after the last day of school, which I believe is June 22nd, but I understand there might be some summer use of the building that we might have to work around, but right now, that's our approach. We would target completing construction and turnover in mid-August, with a closeout kind of wrapping up in September. From a meeting management standpoint, we typically use these tools here. In pre-construction, we like to say that we use a cadence of 3 meetings. We bring the team together once to create an understanding. The follow-up meeting, we complete our action items. We come to an agreement in the second meeting, and in the third meeting, we're coming with documents that need to be approved so we can move to the next step. We summarize and document all that, whether it be an agenda, meeting minutes, or some kind of approval memo, or just something that we use to confirm direction. Our agenda is pretty typical. This here is a sample that we used at Medford High School for a feasibility study that we did recently. Our meeting minutes, like I said, try to get those out within 24 hours of every meeting. This was used at a project we had done at Harvard, and this memo is a sample that we used on a bid project not too long ago. Here you'll see our constraint log. This is used in all 4 phases of the construction process. Basically, we're defining what the constraint is to the next step, the next deliverable, submittal, RFI, who's responsible for it, who's asking for it, what's the expected delivery date, what's been promised, and we're able to basically hold everyone accountable, including ourselves, to make sure that we're hitting the milestones week to week. We're doing what we said we were going to do, and if we're failing to do that, we're figuring out why statistically, and whether it's a shortage of manpower, we know who doesn't have the resources to staff the job, or if we're having lead time issues with the supply chain, we're identifying those and we're able to elevate them, up the supply chain and try to find those solutions. So this is a useful tool that we use on every project. Ted, you think?
Sure.
Mitigation?
Mitigating disruption, something that you folks are very near and dear to, I'm sure. Whenever you sit on a volunteer committee, the last thing you want to have is a phone call at night at home because something happened somewhere that wasn't expected. So we work hard at making sure that the situation at the job site is appropriate for what's going on inside the job site. In your case, we're not sure whether you have summer programs in the building or not, but we would be prepared at the early stages of the project to understand what the requirements might be and know what we need to do to mitigate any potential issues there. But in this particular case, this was the document that we prepared for the Goddard Home, which is a senior living facility in Brookline. And people lived there, and they wanted to do expansion, renovations of areas that existed. And planning for all of that, it was a very detailed process. As we do a lot of hospital work, and so every time we're doing renovations within hospitals, we're always worried about what the situation is around the patients, around the nurses and doctors, and making sure we understand what do we have to be careful of. The same thing is true for your building. Even though it might look simple from the outside, there are still things that we have to make sure we take care of so that you don't get those phone calls at night and we don't have issues with any problems at the job site. You guys have anything to add to that? It's good.
Okay, so the question I've been asking everybody is, and it was hard to read on the screen exactly the weeks you had, but how many weeks do you estimate for the construction portion of this job?
We assumed 8 total weeks for the construction.
Did you say 8?
Yes.
Okay. And realistic to do a summer slam right here?
That, we actually built that schedule. That's actually just the summary, the roll-up. We actually went through every step that we thought was appropriate, in terms of releasing the RFP to the contractors at the right time, probably in the design development period, and then bringing them on almost as if, they're giving us our initial estimate from the GC, not the third-party estimator, and literally building out that schedule and having everything ready to go. So we're literally hitting the ground running with construction as soon as possible. So we do believe it's possible, with a very targeted design development phase and a very targeted, again, procurement and construction document, bid package phase. We do believe we can have it delivered before school starts. Definitely a typical summer slammer.
And do you find that there are any supply chain issues that we should be aware of at this point?
I can take this one. Sure. So, looking at the current project and doing our diligence on the project, we're not seeing a lot of asphalt shingle material lag the way we do with a lot of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing materials. We also have a pretty large outreach of different types of manufacturers and different contractors that we can work with as we're going through the process. It will be part of the bid process to make sure that we have, assured deliveries, at least to the point where, obviously you can't guarantee something until the shop drawings are approved and you get in the queue, but we believe that, with the amount of projects that we do, which is, we have nearly 1,000 projects at any given time across the United States going. So we have a big Rolodex of different partners that we use. We'll be able to utilize that power from a supply chain and a purchasing perspective to ensure that we get the delivery of the materials. And we'll put a long lead procurement matrix together on day one, actually probably pre-going on board, so we make sure that that long list of kind of potential supply chain issues is identified very early. And again, it'll be leveraged during the bid to make sure that we're ensuring those schedules get met.
And are you envisioning we'd need any filed subbids on this job?
That's a great question, and one that we talked about a little bit today, because it's possible to find a prime roofing contractor that could act as the general contractor, depending on their DCAM certifications and what they're allowed to do. But that is very possible. But because that would be a big help in making sure we can meet the schedule, because having to go out for two separate bid processes with general contractors and then subcontractors will definitely slow the process down a little bit. So we would push really hard to try and make that work, and probably a prime roofing contractor acting as the GC, and it would then depend on how large the subcontract values are, whether they needed to be filed subbids or not. We'd hope to keep them small.
Questions from the commission? Okay. I want to thank you for coming in. As I said, I may or may not catch up to Molly in the morning because I do have a day job, but at some point she'll know.
Doesn't really.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could, I'd like to thank you for inviting us here. It's nice to know that you put in a lot of hard work to pull these things together, and you get a chance to at least present it to you folks, having sat in your chairs at different times around my town. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Thank you.
Jim, are we back in recess?
Don't even think mine know it's on TV.
Are you ready, Jim? Okay, you have the floor. We're back in session.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us this evening. I am Amanda Sawyer, Project Director at CHA. With me this evening, I have Sean Sweeney, our Senior VP of our Boston OPM group. As well on our team is Aditya Modi. Addy, for short, was unable to join us this evening because he is on his honeymoon. So we figured that was a good enough excuse for him to not join us. But he'll be returning next week. So Addy and I would be your main points of contact on the team. Just to give you a little bit of history about me, I am a registered architect. I am a LEED Green associate and MCPPO certified. Addy is MCPPO certified as well. He has a history in civil engineering. So the two of us would be your main points of contact on the project. Along with Addy and myself, we have on-site representatives. We have about 15 on-site reps that work directly for us, for CHA. We haven't identified the person yet who would be on this project, but once we're hired, we'll be able to do that. But most of our on-site reps have over 30 years experience in the construction field. So very, very knowledgeable base. As well as the immediate team with CHA, we have a lot of subject matter experts. Our cost estimating team, we have an in-house cost estimating team that sits in Boston, so we are able to tap into them for cost estimates, rec reviews, change order reviews, so just a lot of financial support behind us for those monthly recs and possible change orders. We also have our design review team, our code review, and project controls. So even though we're sort of a small boutique facet within the larger CHA group, we have a deep bench behind us that we're able to tap into when necessary. So we understand your project. It is a roof replacement, but really the way that we look at this project is it's a lot more than just a roof replacement. It's a successful project that you guys are trying to accomplish for this existing building. We understand that Russo Bar has done a facilities assessment for the roof and some of the envelope pieces, the windows and flashing and that type of stuff. So we familiarized ourselves with that. We've also worked closely with Russo Bar. I'm not sure if they are continuing on with this project or not, if you've already signed them on, but we are familiar working with them on other roof projects.
We are following the classic process of hiring the OPM first and having
Perfect.
the OPM assist us in hiring a designer. I would not be surprised if Russo Bar bid on it, but it is an open competition.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're going through the proper processes. A lot of times that isn't the case, and sometimes it throws a little bit of a wrench in the process. So it's great that is the process you guys are going through, and I'll talk a little more about that further in the presentation on how we help you procure the designer as well as the GC. But focusing on your project in this slide, there's a lot of areas that when you are doing a roof replacement, that there might be areas of that have been compromised. So one thing that we like to do as your OPM is do a thorough design review when you do have the architect on board, so that we understand where some of the compromised areas are and where some of those, we want to avoid surprises along the way. So kind of looking at the assessment of what the existing conditions are and being able to make sure we're not recreating the same problems that you are dealing with now. So that could be something like compromised sheathing, rotted areas of structural elements. So we really want to be able to identify that early on, and I think that goes to sort of that investigative process as well as the design process, and being able to have that successful project in the end really starts at the beginning and doing your homework in the beginning. And that's one thing that we really like to do. And, you know, as an architect, that's sort of my forte, being able to make sure that the design is sufficient and working with the designer that you hire to make sure that nothing's been missed. So that's what we like to focus on early on in the process. So we're familiar with roof replacements. Addie and I have just finished a roof replacement on Martha's Vineyard, the West Tisbury School. We worked with Russo Bar on this project, and, you know, again, kind of hit some of those surprises along the way, some rotted sheathing, some rotted structural members. On this project specifically, it was more focused on the flat roofs, the EPDM roofing, and they also chose to add more insulation to the roof membrane, which created areas at the penetrations, so mechanical penetrations, venting, roof hatches, that type of stuff, which we needed to address to rise those up and make sure that there's proper flashing and just all of the details, so that we're making sure that there was no ponding and no puddling that they had been experiencing. I know your project's a little different. You guys have gabled and slope roofs, but the principles are all similar in making sure that, you know, the foundation of the roof is properly designed and executed, so you don't run into any of those issues down the road. So we were happy to bring this project in under budget and on schedule, which is also very key. And I'm sure you're, you know, focused on making sure that the financials of the project are successful, as well as the actual execution of the roof. And that's one thing that we focus on very closely, is the financials of the project. So we have our cost estimating team. We want to make sure that you have a accurate cost estimate before you go out to bid, that you understand what the market conditions are. And then we also try to sort of separate the different areas of the budget, so that there's room for flexibility within the budget. So, for instance, we may have different contingencies that are earmarked for different things. So we may earmark a contingency just for sheathing replacement. And that's sort of a strategy we use, so that the contractor doesn't see that contingency as one bucket that they can tap into. So strategically working with the monies that you have, so that you're getting the best investment on your project. So as your OPM, we have different tools that we use to manage the project. We have a risk register, because as you all are probably aware, as you're doing a construction project, especially a project like this, a roof renovation, there's lots of risks associated with construction. So we try and identify those risks early on, so that it could be potential risks, it could be actual risks. And we log these risks into our risk register, and we review them with the committee, with the contractor, with the whole project team, to strategically come up with solutions for the risks and mitigate them along the way. So this is just one of the tools that we use, and this register is changing on a daily basis as we either mitigate risks or discover new risks, and we categorize those risks as well as high risk, low risk, moderate risk, and what those effects might have on things such as the budget or schedule. Another tool we use is the purchase and delivery schedule. So in the past few years, we've had a lot of lead time issues, material delivery issues, and this has really helped mitigate a lot of those issues that we've been dealing with in the construction industry. We give this template to the contractor and we ask them to fill it in. And what it's been doing is it's a little eye-opening for them, where they fill in the date that they need the material, the date that it's been ordered, the date that they have followed up on the material, the date that they've received confirmation. So it just helps keep the contractor organized and keep them on point as to when the materials need to get ordered. If the lead time is moving a little bit, it helps them stay tuned in to those items and adjust as necessary. We may discover if there's a lead time for a material that is really too far out and it's going to affect the schedule, we'll come together as a team and talk about if there's an alternate material that can be used or substitute that can be used. So it just helps bring all of sort of those risks and challenges to light and helps create those solutions and avoid roadblocks along the way. So back to the proper way of procuring a designer, which you guys are following. So you're procuring your OPM, and then as your OPM, we will work with you to develop the RFP for designer services. So, this is something that we do a lot. We're very familiar with the process. We're also very familiar with various architects and designers who are leaders in the industry that we'll reach out to and let them know, this RFP is coming out on the street. Would love for you to respond to it, and we drum up business in that respect, and have allow options and make sure that people understand and know what's out in the field of design. So once we've done that, and sort of stepping back, we also will help you do the interviews as well. Anything that you need from us as far as the support for doing the hiring the architect, we are here to help you. Every city, every town is a little different, and one thing that we try and do is support each group in what they need for their individual project. Once the architect is on board, we'll go through the schematic design, and as I mentioned earlier, sort of my forte is being a registered architect. I really like the design portion of it and digging in and making sure that those details are captured that need to be captured, and that everything within the design is being addressed, and making sure that the city's needs are being covered within the design. Moving on to the detailed design or design development, at that point, a lot of times we will do a cost estimate. And I do recommend that you do that so you understand where the costs currently are. As I'm sure you're all aware, in the last few years, costs have been fluctuating almost on a daily basis. So it's really good to keep your finger on the pulse and understanding where the current costs of this project are going to land, so you're able to plan financially for the project. The architect as well will likely do a cost estimate. So we'll have the OPM cost estimate, we'll have the architect cost estimate, and we come together and do a reconciliation of the cost estimate. And again, just making sure that everyone is on the same page and there is, cohesion between the two cost estimates. Once we have made it through design, we will help with the procurement of the GC. So we will do the bidding documents, the front-end documents for the invitation to bid. We'll advertise that. We'll assist the city in their portion of the advertisement for the paper, the newspaper advertisements, the combi advertisements. once the bids come in, we go through the bids, we do a bid tabulation form, and we'll review that with the committee and give our, our recommendation. We'll do reference checks, all of the processes to make sure that the bidders are qualified and available to work on the project. Once we get into construction, we have our on-site reps. So like I said, we have an on-site rep that we would assign this project to. We feel it would be important to have someone on site as this is a fast-moving project. I'm assuming that you guys want to get this done, sort of summer slammer type of project.
You assume correctly.
Okay, so assuring that, safety is a huge issue, that we would want to make sure there's someone on site, making sure that there's, if you have summer school, if there's children on the grounds, making sure that component of safety is being targeted, as well as just making sure that the quality control of the project is going well, and having that extra set of eyes on site. So we would highly recommend that. At the end of the project, we'll be here through closeout and punch list and make sure that everything comes together. That's sort of probably one of the hardest pieces of the project is the closeout and punch list. So we really help drive home the fact that everything on the punch list needs to get accomplished, and we stay on the GC to make sure that happens. So in closing, we are very well versed in this type of project. We don't see projects as far as size in the sense that you may consider this a smaller project, but we really don't see it that way. Each project is very important to the communities that they are in, and we take that very seriously for every single project that we work on. As I mentioned, we just finished a roof replacement in West Tisbury on the island. We're there for the facilities director, has our cell phone number, calls us. I feel like the communication level on these smaller projects is even more important sometimes than larger projects, because they're quick, they're fast-paced, and we just want to make sure everything is getting done properly and isn't being missed. So we also have our in-house technical specialists, as I've mentioned, and our goal at the end of the day is to just make sure that the city has a successful project. So thank you very much for having us, and we're happy to answer any questions.
We have a couple of questions we've been asking everybody. How many weeks would you expect the construction phase to take?
I'm sorry, can you say it?
How many weeks do you think the construction phase will occupy?
So I would say for this project, probably 10 to 12 weeks for the actual construction to happen. It's a relatively straightforward project, as long as we don't run into any issues with the sheathing, structural replacement, that type of stuff. I think it could go pretty smoothly.
Do you foresee any supply chain issues on this job?
We haven't really hit any major supply chain issues for roofing per se. A lot of the areas that we've seen supply chain issues are electrical and mechanical, but not so much roofing. But again, the project and delivery schedule that we use and give to our GCs really helps identify if there are any new issues that maybe we haven't been experiencing that have come up, in the current past.
So then is it realistic that if school ends in late June, that we'll be open for Labor Day?
I think you will be open. There might be some lagging work going on into the fall, to be realistic. Here we are, end of February, kind of already sort of in March. So by the time that you have the architect procured, the design going out to bid, we're sort of inching into more of a sort of late June, getting the GC signed on board. So, we might be looking at July, August, September, but we've run into that before on projects similar to this. And if construction continues into the school year, we would work closely with the administration on how to phase that and how to accomplish the work that needs to get done while school is going on.
Maybe you talk about, we can pre-qual the GCs too while we're getting the place done. So.
Yep, so we'll qualify the GCs during the design phase as well. So there'll be some overlap of tasks.
Yes.
Questions?
How do you feel about putting in a limited amount of time for the contractor to perform?
Into their contract?
Yes.
I don't know if...
In other words, if we said you've got 10 weeks to get this job done because it has to open at the end of August, is that a strategy that you would find effective?
Can I
Yeah, if you want to jump in, sure.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, she did a great job, so I didn't say much. But I figured I'll say something that's worth a drive, right? As far as, it really comes down to getting the right contract and the job was committed to the project. We can have all the contractual language in the world, and they're going to bring up excuses. They couldn't do this, they couldn't do that, they needed this information. And so one of the things that Amanda mentioned earlier is one of the things that's very important to us is to make sure there's no delay in the process. We don't want to give them a reason not to perform. But we would lay out as part of the upfront bid package of what the expectations are, and not just a finish date, but we would put milestones in there. And we would want the milestones because that if they miss an early milestone, there's still a chance for them to make up on later milestones. If you just put out one date as the end date and they miss it, the boat is sunk already. And so we like to have them course correct as time goes on. So, and we'll do this with the designer as well. And when we do the walkthrough with the contractors, we'll also get their advice. And we have Amanda's expertise as an architect. We have other architects on our own staff that we might say, how would you, as you lay out this project and phase it, would you, do you do the north side first, then the south side, or what's the right approach? And then we would build milestones around that. And so we'll know early on, like in week 1, if they're supposed to be done with half of the north side and they're not, we're gonna have a conversation right then, right? And so we're not, we understand how critical it is. So, not just roof projects, but we open up schools. We just finished the Lincoln School, which is a very big renovation in Lincoln, Mass. Two-phase school, and Amanda and I worked on that one. And they opened up one phase, and then they're opening up the second phase. And it was important for both phases to meet the September dates, right? The first phase had to meet the younger grades, right? And the second phase, September, had to meet the upper grades. But we still had work that had to be done. And so we worked with the GC to come back and do punch list work off hours, right? So for instance, if let's say there's some roof rot in one area, we need to be reactive and say, stop, we're now gonna hop to the south side because you're gonna lose time here, right? And then while that's getting worked out in the 3 or 4 days, we would then send them back. If that work then needed to be done or finished post start of school, we would then work with them to either work, in the September when they're still light, later in the day, to do it then, or come in on Saturdays and do the work. And so to answer your question more directly, from a contractual standpoint, not only would we have dates, but we'd have milestones, and then we would actually have recovery built into it. What I mean by that is we would have language in there and say that if any punch list items need to happen after September 1 or whatever date makes the most sense, that they have to do it at their expense on Saturdays, that we don't want to talk about overtime or premium time or anything else. And really, at the end of the day, you don't want, and you know this because you guys, I'm sure, have been doing this on many projects, we don't want to tie the hands of the general contractor, nor do we want to go out with a front-end bid document that seems onerous or impossible, because that's going to cut down the amount of people that actually submit pricing, right? So it's a way to, you know, and I like to say fair works both ways. So it's like, okay, what's fair, right? Because, I mean, I think it's fair for a school to say, we want you done for start of school. That's a fair statement. But then how do we actually help them conform to good behavior? And that's where we just have to be careful as a team to make sure that we put it in a way that we're not raising the cost or scaring off potential bidders. So it's a balance. It's a balance, but it's important.
One other question I forgot. Do you foresee any filed sub-bids on this job?
Roofing.
Do you wanna-
Go ahead. You want me to take it?
You go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer a question, if you don't mind, just a little different too, is sometimes we work with towns and cities that say, hey, it's just an HVAC project, so all we need to do is get an HVAC contractor to do this work. And we found that has always fallen down because things come up that maybe it's an architectural flashing detail, maybe it's a chimney that's starting to come apart, right? And so all of a sudden, if you just said we're going to give this to a roofer, you're going to all of a sudden hit a stop point or an issue. This would be a foul sub-bid job, but we would envision it to be, you know, that it would be a foul sub-bid with a GC. And we would identify through the study and through design, we'd ask them out early, is there any trades that might need to be involved in this project? We want to identify them now so they become part of the overall bid. Although the GC can, you know, it all depends on the cost. So if something's a small minor and it can be self-performed by a GC, then we're going to probably ask that to be part of the self-performing, right? We don't want to create multiple subcontractor bids. It just confuses the job. But at the same point, if there's a mechanical penetrations that we recognize that we may need a mechanical subcontractor to be engaged with, we want to identify that early. That would go on our risk list, right? So the risk there, just to kind of talk that through, the risk would be the ability to react to a issue with, and for anyone who's done their roof at their house, right? The roofers come, they pull stuff off, and all of a sudden your entire flue goes off, and you're like, oh, now great, now how am I going to get that done, right? I need to find a flue, I need to make sure someone gets out here and do that. We're going to identify that as part of the risk, and as a team, and with the project team, meaning the designer and our team, we're going to decide, is that a high risk, low risk, and what's the mitigation plan? So we're going to be looking at all that stuff early. And you asked the question earlier about supply chain. You know, some supply chain stuff has popped up very strangely, like dense glass. So dense glass is what you would use for like sheathing on a building. If you see some buildings go up, it's typically yellow. Sometimes it's purple, but if you see these buildings go up and they're all yellow, that's what they use in place of, let's say, plywood from years ago on different vapor barriers, right? You couldn't get it in July. Right? And we saw buildings going up that were purple and yellow and all kinds of funny colors because they were just sourcing them from wherever they could get them. And that was just a surprise. We could be on this roof and find out that roof insulation all of a sudden is hard to get because there was a hurricane in Florida 2 weeks earlier, right? And so this is the kind of stuff we want to identify early. We also want to pre-order. We didn't talk about pre-ordering, but one of the things that we want to put in the bid documents is we want to make sure that that material is on site, not just in time, because just in time doesn't work anymore. We want to make sure that that material is either at the yard of the roofer, or we want to make sure it's on site, stored and secured. I sleep better at night to know that if we're doing, 300 squares of shingles, I like looking at the 300 squares before we start the roof, because the last thing we want to do is get halfway through the roof and then place our second order of shingles and then realize, oh, there's a 3-week delay, right? So these are all the things that the purchase and delivery schedule, the risk register, they're tools that we use, but what it really does is help us focus. And we look at this group, quite frankly, as your experience, to help us think through some of things based on your experience, right? I mean, experience is a great thing. It really helps us with projects. And sometimes, we'll be focused on one thing and someone on this group or on the project team might say, hey, have you thought about insulation? Because when we replace this roof, maybe there's an area we need to add insulation. Do we even have that sourced yet? Have we had the design team sign off on it on a submittal? In other words, on these projects, you can't just rent to Home Depot and get insulation and hope that it's going to meet design specifications, right? And so these are the things that we really try to bring to the surface early. And I'm sure you agree, Amanda, but once you start putting the product down, all these things have needed to be decided and been put to bed. Then we can focus on quality. But we can't focus on quality if we're worried about all the other stuff. And so we really try to do a lot of heavy pre-planning to make sure that we're, poised for success from a kind of installation. And then we can say, hey, let's look at that flashing on that chimney. Let's look at how you tied in this. And that's what our on-site people do. And the safety is a big component. None of us want to be on the, front page of the Boston Globe that, God forbid, someone got hurt or something blew off a roof over the weekend and hit a kid playing in the playground or whatever the case may be. And so these roof projects we really take seriously because we want to make sure there's no bad outcomes from a safety standpoint.
Okay. Any other questions? Then thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, we'll start deliberating, but I'm going to suggest that we're going to take a 5-minute recess, stretch our legs, and then come back and we'll start deliberating.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a good evening. Okay, we're back in session. Anybody want to lead off with general thoughts? Jackie?
No. Well, in talking with Terry, because we were talking about the time, the lead time, the work time, and getting it done during the summer. And one of the things that Skanska had pointed out was that they could have 2 groups working on different areas of the building. The others never brought up the idea of the concept of 2. So I like Skanska the best.
Okay. Any thoughts, Terry?
I agree with Jackie. I also like the idea that they walk through the site already.
Around the building.
Around the building and everything. And we know Ann Jeanette, and we know her quality of work, so that's a plus.
Ed?
Yeah, because of the timeline that we're looking at and the experience needed and the personnel that are no longer present here in Attleboro, I don't think there's any choice but to pick Skanska for those reasons. It seems a little unfair, but their experience would make the difference between getting the thing done on time and not.
And they've done the other
They've had
roofs.
a proven record, so
Please?
they've had a proven record. Good job.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, they fixed Plum Sutton and Brennan. They're amazing.
And that's even more important now with the personnel problem that we have.
Do you mean the fact that we have an acting mayor, no personnel director, and no budget director, who also served as the capital projects
That's it.
administrator? Yes, understood. Jay, any thoughts?
For me, Skanska and CHA, it was pretty close. But I agree with Jackie that I would go with Skanska first. Only they seem to do their homework a little more in depth. But honestly, I'd be okay with CHA as well.
I was surprised I liked CHA because
Yeah, me
they
too.
were not high on my list originally. I had Skanska up here and the others were down there somewhere. But CHA was really
yeah, they were impressive.
pretty good.
I would think.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were second of mine.
I had Scancer as number 1, CHA as number 2, CREF as number 3, and RGB as number 4.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Skanska has a
We all
proven
think
record.
alike.
We're working with them now. We've worked with them in the past, and they've been good to work with, and I can't see why we wouldn't use them again.
Yeah, and from my point of view, I agree with all that you've said. And Jerry and I get to see Bob Sharist in action every Wednesday, and he knows what he's doing. And so I have to say that CHA did also surprise me. I thought they did very well. If I was going to rank the 4, I'd do it exactly the way Jerry did.
He did.
And so I guess we should do the formal, 1, 2, 3, 4, and write it down, because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yes.
So I think let's see, I got Jerry right here. So you had RGB as 4, Jerry?
Yes.
And Skanska as 1, CREF as 3, and CHA as 2?
CHA was number 2.
Yes, and so I had the same thing. So Jay, what was your ranking?
I had Skanska 1, CHA 2, RGB 3, and CREF 4.
Ed?
Yeah. Skanska 1, CHA 2, CREF 4, and RGB 3.
Terry?
Skanska 1, CHA 2, CREF 3, and RGB 4.
And Jackie?
Same as you and Jerry and Terry. Skanska 1,
Yep.
CHA 2, CREF 3, and RGB 4.
Okay. Well, then it's unanimous, and I'd say for the record, the motion would be in order to recommend to the mayor that we engage Skanska as the OPM for the Willett roof.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any reason that we shouldn't adjourn at 7:34?
No?
Okay, motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:34.